In a world where secrets are currency and silence is survival, 9-year-old Lila dared to speak a truth so raw it unraveled her family, her village, and the fragile web of lies holding them together. Her hunger wasn't just for food. It was for justice, and the cost of her honesty would change everything. Lila was 9 years old, small for her age, with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken stories. She lived in a modest village where the air always smelled of wood smoke and the river ran cold even in summer. Her family's home was a cramped, weathered structure, its walls patched with whatever scraps her father could find. Food was scarce, not just for Lila's family, but for most in the village. The harvests had been poor for 3 years, and the market stalls stood half empty, their wares too costly for most to afford. Lila's stomach growled often, a constant reminder of what they lacked. Her mother, Mara, would ration out thin portions of porridge or boiled roots, always giving Lila and her younger brother, Tino, the larger share. But it was never enough. Lila's father, Joran, worked long hours at the mill, grinding what little grain the village could spare. He came home with flour-dusted clothes and a tired slump to his shoulders, his wages barely enough to keep the family afloat. Mara took in mending to help, her fingers pricked raw from endless stitching. They did their best, but the hunger gnawed at Lila, not just in her belly but in her thoughts. She noticed things others tried to ignore. The way the mill owner, Mr. Varn, always had a full table, his children plump and laughing, while the workers' families grew thinner. She saw how the village elders spoke of fairness, but turned away when Varn's men took extra portions from the communal stores. Lila didn't understand why no one said anything, why they all pretended it was normal. One evening, as the family sat around their small table, Lila pushed her bowl of watery soup away. Tino, only 6, was scraping his spoon against the bottom of his own bowl, chasing the last bits of broth. Mara's face was tight, her eyes fixed on the table. Joran was silent, his hands clenched. Lila couldn't hold it in any longer. "Why does Mr. Varn get so much food when we don't?" she asked, her voice sharp in the quiet room. Mara froze, and Joran's head snapped up. "Don't talk like that, Lila," he said quickly. "It's not our place." But Lila pressed on. "I saw his men take 2 sacks of grain from the stores today. They didn't pay. No one stopped them. Why?" Mara reached for her hand, but Lila pulled away. "It's not right," she said. "We're hungry, and they're not. They're stealing, and everyone acts like it's fine." Joran's voice grew stern. "You don't understand how things work. Keep quiet, or you'll cause trouble." But Lila couldn't unsee what she'd seen, couldn't unfeel the ache in her stomach. She went to bed that night with her question burning inside her, unanswered. The next day, Lila walked to the village square, where the weekly market was set up. The stalls were sparse, but Mr. Varn's table was piled high with bread, cheese, and dried fruit. Lila stood nearby, watching as people averted their eyes, hurrying past. She saw old Mira, who could barely walk, hand over her last coins for a single loaf, while Varn's son, a boy Lila's age, grabbed a handful of dried apples and ate them without a care. Something snapped in Lila. She stepped forward, her small frame trembling, and pointed at Varn. "You're taking too much," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "You take grain that's not yours, and we're all hungry because of it." The square went silent. Faces turned toward her, some shocked, others afraid. Varn's eyes narrowed, his mouth curling into a sneer. "What's this nonsense, girl?" he said. "Go home before you embarrass yourself." But Lila stood her ground. "I saw your men take sacks from the stores. I saw you sell what should be shared. You're why we're starving." Whispers rippled through the crowd. A few nodded, their faces grim, but most looked away, fear etched in their eyes. Varn laughed, but it was a cold sound. "A child's imagination," he said, waving her off. "She's confused." He gestured to one of the elders, who stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Lila, you shouldn't make accusations. Go home now." Lila's cheeks burned, but she didn't move. "It's the truth," she said. "Why won't anyone say it?" The elder's face hardened, and he motioned for Joran, who had just arrived, to take her away. Joran grabbed Lila's arm, his grip tight, and pulled her back toward home. "What were you thinking?" he hissed. "You'll ruin us." That night, the family ate in silence. Tino looked at Lila with wide, confused eyes, sensing the tension. Mara kept her head down, her hands shaking as she served the meal. Joran didn't speak, but his anger filled the room. Lila wanted to explain, to make them see, but the words felt heavy, trapped. She didn't sleep well that night. She heard her parents whispering, their voices sharp with worry. The next morning, Joran left for the mill earlier than usual, and Mara barely looked at Lila as she handed her a small piece of bread for breakfast. Word of Lila's outburst spread quickly. By midday, neighbors were whispering, some with admiration, others with disapproval. A few, like old Mira, stopped by to thank Lila quietly, their voices low as if afraid of being overheard. But others avoided the family, crossing the street when they saw Joran or Mara. At the mill, Joran's hours were cut, a subtle punishment no one acknowledged. The family's portions from the communal stores grew smaller, the sacks lighter than before. Lila overheard Mara telling Joran they might not have enough to last the month. Guilt twisted in Lila's chest, but so did her anger. She hadn't lied. Why was the truth making things worse? A week later, a meeting was called in the village hall. Lila wasn't supposed to go, but she slipped in, hiding behind a group of adults. Varn stood at the front, his voice smooth as he spoke of unity and shared struggle. He said the stores were low because of the drought, not mismanagement. The elders nodded, their faces unreadable. Lila's heart pounded. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. "That's not true," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "You're taking more than your share. I saw it. Others saw it too." She looked at the crowd, hoping someone would speak up. A few shifted uncomfortably, but no one did. Varn's smile was gone. "This child is trouble," he said. "Her lies could tear us apart." The elders murmured agreement, and one suggested Lila's family repay the village for the disruption. Joran stood, his face pale. "She's just a child," he said. "She didn't mean harm." But the room felt cold, the weight of judgment heavy. Lila wanted to scream that she wasn't lying, that they all knew the truth, but her voice felt small now, drowned by the adults' murmurs. The days that followed were harder. The family's rations dwindled further, and Joran's work at the mill became unsteady. Mara stopped taking in mending, as fewer neighbors trusted them. Tino grew quieter, his small body thinner. Lila felt the weight of her words, but she also felt the fire of her truth. One evening, old Mira came to their door, her hands trembling as she pressed a small bundle of dried herbs into Lila's hands. "You were right to speak," she whispered. "Others are talking now. Keep going." Lila clutched the bundle, her resolve hardening. Slowly, whispers grew louder. A few villagers began questioning Varn's accounts, checking the stores themselves. One night, a group found 2 hidden sacks of grain behind Varn's shed, marked as communal property. The truth Lila had spoken started to crack the village's silence. Some thanked her quietly, others still blamed her. But the hunger that had bound them in fear began to loosen its grip. Lila's family faced lean days, but they held on, and Lila learned that truth, though costly, could plant seeds for change. Her small voice had stirred something bigger, something that couldn't be silenced again.